crisis. And in the process of trying to work this out, this woman was shot and killed. Her name was Barbara Schneider. And the outcry from community was, we have to do something. What are we going to do to bring awareness, have people talking about mental health, reduce stigma, and make some strides in how we deal with these kinds of cases. And so a group was formed, and for actually 18 years, they were a fully volunteer group without a staff member who came together and held this conference. And then in the year 2019, Jewish Family and Children's Services, along with Jewish Family Service of St. Paul, decided that they were going to partner on this conference, and Jewish Family and Children's Services created a program called Community Conferences. So we do this conference and we do another conference called Keeping the Spirit Alive, and it's people supporting and caregiving, and also for Alzheimer's and dementia. So we lean into the Alzheimer's and dementia side of things in that conference, but we do get a lot of caregivers in general. In fact, at this conference, we're going to talk about caregivers who deal with caregiving for people that have mental health issues, which, as you may or may not know, is when people talk about caregiving, that's not what they think about. They think about the elder population. So here we are 25 years later. I couldn't be prouder to be part of the agency and this program. And what we do is we source directly from community need. So for a lot of the time before we head up to the actual planning of the conference, I am out talking to groups like yourselves and saying, what is it that you're seeing? What are the questions that aren't getting answered about mental health? What are the things you hear over and over and over again? What are the things that feel heavy on your heart in regards to mental health? And we take this incredibly large list. It's usually between 65 and 85 topics. And the planning committee and I pare this down to about 20 topic areas. And then we try to seek presenters to have these presentations. So I'm going to show you how to get in and register for this. The other thing I want to really bring to your attention is this is and always has been a free and open to all conference. It is a one-day conference. It's held on Sunday, October 19th this year. We do give you lunch if you pre-register, and I guarantee you, you will get something out of the conference, if not many things. But this is our homepage. And when you go to our homepage, all you have to do is go to our graph with our kaleidoscope and click it. And it's going to tell you about the conference, and it's going to say you can register, you can sign up to volunteer. By the way, we love volunteers, and we have worked out our schedule so that even if you volunteer at the conference, you can basically attend most of the conference or sometimes all the conference while still having volunteer roles. It takes about 75 volunteers to pull this day off. I am going to show you the 2025 brochure. So here we are. When you go into here, we talk a little bit about this year and what brings us here, talk about the keynote speaker, who's going to talk about from adversity to advocacy. And then here's all our sessions. So Washburn Center for Children is going to present about mental health in schools, breaking barriers in the workplace. We're going to talk about gambling addiction and how that affects mental health. Sonia, who is from the Minnesota Alliance on Gambling, will also be talking about addiction to screens and how that affects younger people. We're going to be talking about the book that was written by Kathy Flaminio and her colleague Chrissy called I Am Safe, Mind Body Skills for Teen Mental Health. Kathy was also our keynote speaker last year because we very much believe in promoting wellness for everyone. System of care, how providers' implicit bias affect parenting children of color with mental health challenges, supporting yourself and others during times of change and uncertainty. Who needs that one? Creating communities of belonging, a reflective writing and meditation workshop, navigating scarcity mindset, insights and strategies for compassionate care, Turning pain into purpose, the science and story of post-traumatic growth. Have you all been hearing that terminology, post-traumatic growth, over and over? So we're going to dig into that a little bit. And then we have a session about youth who may be supporting parents in the home with mental illness. And then we're going to talk about caregiving and mental health. So those are all our breakout sessions for this year. I do have some postcards with the breakout sessions, and ta-da, on the back is a QR code that'll take you right to this page that I've been showing you, so you can register for the conference. And I guess I want to ask if anybody has any questions about the Mental Health Education Conference. I could talk and talk and talk, but I know I have a very short time frame. So again, I want to invite you to join us on October 19th and come to the conference and say hi and enjoy yourselves and give us really good feedback so we know what to do for next year. And I hope to see you all again soon so we can talk about mental health more. Thank you.
If you haven't been to the conference, I highly recommend that you go. It is wonderful.
Hi.
Hi,
Go for
is it okay?
Yeah. Go for it. I'm gonna dance around you.
Okay.
Please come right over.
Hello, everybody. I'm Valerie Dean. I'm an ambassador with St. Joan of Arc. I'm also a member of the Education Committee. I will be introducing our speaker this evening. Before I do, I just want to mention that Heidi back there will be, I always forget her last name, that's why I'm saying back there. Sorry, Heidi.
Shelf.
Yeah. She will be facilitating a Q&A at the end of Dr. Turner's presentation, so feel free to jot down questions as they occur to you. Glasses on. Dr. Warrawan Turner is a psychologist with 20 years of experience working with people from different cultural backgrounds. She currently provides individual psychotherapy for adults and has worked in both residential facilities and outpatient clinics. In the past, she facilitated group therapy and provided clinical supervision for graduate students and doctoral interns. Her specialty is trauma treatment of adults who have experienced childhood neglect and abuse and relational trauma. She loves her work because she gets to witness people's strength every day and feel humbled to learn from her clients who have been her best teachers. Dr. Turner will be speaking to us this evening on BIPOC mental health. Welcome, Dr. Turner.
Okay, how are we doing with the sounds? Everybody's hearing me okay? All right, and I'm not yelling. Good.
Give me just one moment. I'll get you set up and ready to go here.
Okay, so before I get started, I would like to invite everyone to take a moment of silence to remember the life lost and all who have been harmed by the Annunciation Church and School shooting. Thank you very much for doing that. Hey, so thank you for spending the evening with me today. I know Tuesday evening is very busy for everyone. So we're going to be spending about an hour today. I know that there'll be Q&A at the end. But before I get started, does anybody have a question in mind as you're coming in and hearing about, okay, BIPOC mental health, this would be one thing that I want to know. as I leave today. That is okay. If there are any questions that come up, please feel free to like raise your hand, because I would like this to be as conversational as much as possible. So, Val already gave an introduction, just want to give it a little bit of, information about myself. So, I have spent the first 10 years of my career working with, co-occurring disorder population. So that is people who have both chemical health and mental health struggles. Currently, and I would say in the last 5 years, half of my caseloads are BIPOC individuals. I have, so majority of people who sought me out are people of Asian descent. So I work with people from Vietnamese, Korean, Taiwanese, Chinese, Tibetan, only 2 Thai clients. And then we'll talk a little bit about like the cultural beliefs that perhaps prevent people from help-seeking behavior. So half of my clients are BIPOC. A quarter of my clients are mental health therapists, which is the good news that as we are supporting our clients, we also seeking help for ourselves. I have a training and spent again the first 10 years of my career with dialectical behavioral therapy. For those of you who are not familiar with DBT, people often joke calling it as cognitive behavioral therapy on steroids. So it's pretty much like very skills based. Many of my clients said that, man, I wish they taught us this in school about how do you regulate yourself, how do you tolerate distress, how do you have healthy relationship, have self-respect, know how to ask for what you need respectfully. I am specialized in trauma, not because I chose to, but because I had to. So at my first outpatient clinic, I was doing intakes, and basically everyone who walked in the door has some kind of trauma. And at first I thought, oh no, trauma is not my specialty, so I'm gonna refer you to my colleagues. And that kept happening. So I thought, okay, maybe I can't be in this profession and not know how to treat trauma. So at that time, I was a practitioner with a master's degree. So I went back and got my doctorate and sought out like training sites that would give me exposure to work with people with trauma. I am a certified eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is EMDR. It is an approved treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder by American Psychological Association. So they acknowledge it as an effective treatment. And I work with adults only because children and adolescents scare me. I don't speak their language. So that is that about who I am. So this slide tells you about what is coming. So we're going to talk about mental health and stigma, where we were, where we are, and how far we still have to go. BIPOC help-seeking behavior, political climate and mental health, what I have observed in my practice, what I know from be with other clinicians. I belong to 4 consultation group. I am a solo practitioner, so it's really important for me to not just be isolated. So I have consultation for complex trauma, for EMDR, for private practice, and also kind of like support group for therapists. Suicide rate among different groups, so different marginalized groups. Suicide assessment and prevention. I do not at all expect that by the time we are done with our evening today that you will be able to assess suicide assessment. I use this as a guide to perhaps, if you know someone in the community or someone you know personally who are struggling with mental health, there might be some warning signs that say that, okay, maybe, they need help at this time. How to promote mental well-being as a part of, an individual in the community. And at the end, what to look for in a therapist. Because I have been at both sides of that table. So, first off, mental health and stigma. I am surprised. So this data is pretty new. It comes from Monitor on Psychology, which is a magazine published by American Psychological Association. So every month I'll get this magazine and it has like short articles and also reference to kind of like if you want to go further. So this one comes from the September edition. 88% of US adults say that having a mental health disorder is nothing to be ashamed of. That number is surprising to me, which made me wonder, who did they send the survey to, right? I wouldn't be surprised if for younger population, like how people are so open, on social media. I know that there are so many shows or books. I would imagine some of you, if not all, have seen or read the Hunger Games book. And if you read, that discusses PTSD, flashbacks, can't sleep, like all these things. So there are more exposure. And 83% say that generally they are comfortable talking about their mental health. Again, younger population for sure. 84 US adults think that the term mental illness still carry a stigma. I do agree. I don't use the term mental illness in my practice. I usually talk about our challenges, our struggles, because illness implies that there's something wrong. And I don't want people to feel like there's something wrong with you when you walk into the clinic, because we all have challenges. 35% said that they would view somebody differently if they know that they have some kind of mental health condition, which again is only human, right? I think our brain categorize people into kind of like, oh, are these people like me? Are these people different from me? So by learning about somebody's mental health condition, there's that kind of like us versus them that happen. 55% US adults said that feeling emotionally safe is the reason that they chose to share. Now, emotional safety is very important. And I tell people, I mean, sometimes people feel like, oh, I know that I have to face my fear, I should stop avoidance. I'm like, well, sometimes trust your intuition and wisdom. Maybe there are certain people you shouldn't disclose certain information to. So be emotionally safe. And then after sharing that, 54% find a sense of relief, which makes sense again, because when we feel ashamed that there's something wrong with us, the sense of isolation that you have to hide, that happens. But if you are able to share that in a safe environment, then you know that, okay, I'm not alone. So that's kind of part of how therapy works as well. Okay, so BIPOC health-seeking behavior. I have these bullet points based on my experience in the field and what I see in my practice. There's a huge surge in health-seeking behavior after COVID, during COVID. And that is because, highlighting the word stress. People have a harder time saying that I have anxiety and depression. People have an easier time saying that I'm stressed. And if I'm stressed and I need some help, what's the harm? And during COVID, like me and my colleagues, like we cannot take any more people. We can't even take wait lists because everybody is stressed and they need some help. So COVID has been one phenomenon that seems to increase health-seeking behavior. Telehealth becomes common. In the past, I have to work, until 6, 7 p.m. to accommodate people's work schedule. Right now, my work hours are 9 to 4 because there are people who can see me via telehealth in lunch break. There are people who only go to the office 2 days a week and 3 days give them flexibility. So telehealth increased access, social media and shows like I mentioned before. I mean, these days people post about everything. What is his name? His last name is Mendes. He's a relatively young singer. He's like, I struggled with social anxiety all my life, right? So it becomes normalized. Like, oh, this person has this struggle too. Oh, I'm not alone. Again, so that kind of helped promote that. I would say that one of the biggest things, so this is why policy is important, that the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act in 2008 dictates that insurance companies have to cover both physical health and mental health equally. You cannot say, oh, if you have to do have MRI or this test, yes, we cover it, but if you want to go see a therapist, we can't. I remember the time, because this came out 2008. I remember the time when when I called in to check the benefits, then they would say, oh yeah, this member, have 20 sessions per year. If you want more, you need to have prior authorization, which means I have to write this long document to justify why this person needs more help, which then is a burden for the provider. But that being said, insurance is not gonna let you get away with it without having some kind of justification of why this person needs mental health treatment, and that is medical necessity. So I personally, how I do this in my practice is that I have a phone call, initial consultation with people between 15 to 20 minutes to get a sense of what is it that you're looking for and am I the right person for you? Because I don't want people to come in the first session, share their life story and say, oh, I'm sorry, that's not my specialty, right? Because that is people coming in with vulnerability. I will tell them that if you have insurance and if you would like to use your insurance coverage, there needs to be a medical necessity. Medical necessity is a fancy term that say that, well, you have to have something wrong with you for you to be able to see a therapist. And in mental health, how we signifies medical necessity is via diagnosis. So many of you, I'm sure, have heard like, oh yeah, I have depression, I have anxiety. Those are not the diagnosis, those are conditions. A diagnosis is if you have major depressive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, and you have to meet certain criteria. So I tell people that. Now, majority of the time, it helps people. I have several clients who, because they have major depressive disorder or they have post-traumatic stress disorder, later on, as when they have to apply for Social Security benefits, it becomes helpful, thing like, yeah, this person has had mental health challenges that, reduce their capacity to work, and that's why they should be qualified for disabilities. I have a handful of people in the last 20 years that after I told them that, they said, oh no, I'm not gonna come and see a therapist because A, I'm in a law enforcement. I don't wanna have like duty, fitness for duty being in question. So again, stigma that I'm still running rampant. I have a couple of people who said, I am seeking a career I have political future. And again, I don't want at some point that my mental health records become a problem. So we still have these barriers that not allow people to seek mental health treatment. Questions so far? Everybody's with me? Okay. Okay, political climate and mental health. Now, because my specialty is in trauma, I do not see people 3 months to 6 months. Most of the time, people see me over a year. My longest client right now is 50. Why? Because, sometimes people kind of like, but I don't see them like weekly or every, like 3 times a week. Usually they have time to kind of work through certain things and they might be like trauma activation because of life circumstances. So then, we kind of continue and they even said, I think I'm gonna see you until you die. Not they. I was just like, okay. And I tell people, I said, I have enough integrity to tell you when I think we are done, when I don't think that you can benefit from me anymore. It's a breath of fresh air is might be what you need right now, like this might be as far as you can come. So I think that's a fair thing to tell people. So to the reason that I'm saying that I see people long term because I might not get 20 phone calls and say, hey, I need to come see you, I'm a person of color. But I see the significant distress from people who are in the BIPOC community. I have one client who's asylum seeker. They came in, after like all the immigration and deportation, and they were like panicking. But they did a great job at trying to center themselves and say, you know what, I have to remind myself, I'm here legally, my case is still pending, they're not gonna deport me. But I tell people like, it is a tall order to tell people that you are safe now, because like, you really don't know. There are a lot of things that has happened. So I should mention something about why people saw me out. Like I said, majority are of Asian descent, but I have a few actually, African American clients. And one person specifically said, I want somebody who understands the experience of being in a marginalized group. But I don't want to run into you at my church. Right, so like, oh, okay, so you want the shared experience, but you don't want someone who kind of like invade your personal space. So, yeah, so I know that the people increase distress, even with my white clients. I have people in tears and said, why do we treat people this way? Right, so it's become this collective trauma and not just like, oh, that happened to those people, and I have citizenship, so this is not gonna happen to me. But people recognize the humanity that we all share, right? I have 3 clients who have plans to move out of the country. One's already gone, one is in the process of applying to move to Australia, one has an exit plan to Canada. People do not feel safe. Right, so again, this kind of like the level of stress that happened. Impact of education and sense of safety. I have a few clients who are educators, and they said, my students don't come to school anymore. And I said, how come? Well, because their parents are afraid of, being found out. So parents stop going to work, and then the students, go and work instead to support their family. So again, this ripple effects is not like one person or, a cluster of people, but impacts a lot of people. So, all right. I am going to transition to kind of suicide rate among different groups. So I have 2 versions. This is for visual people, so you can see. And these are bullet point people. I am a bullet point person, so that's why I have 2 versions. All right, so for this one, you see non-Hispanic American Indian Alaska Native. I don't know why it didn't come here. This is from the CDC Center of Disease Control, and it's the reference is at the back. So this is the largest group that we see the suicide rate. Now, 23.8 people based on 100,000 individuals. So I look it up. We only have 2.9 million Native Americans in this country, which means 697 died by suicide. Right, which is a huge rate when you look at it that way. And then the next one, non-Hispanic white, majority of people in this country is white, so it makes sense that it goes up to 7.6. Next one, non-Hispanic Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander, 7.3. Non-Hispanic multiracial, non-Hispanic Black, 9.1. I will get into a minute why that is low considering the high risk factors in the community. Hispanic 8.2 and non-Hispanic Asian is 6.5. I will also share why that is low. So be aware of warning signs in a different group. So there are studies that for Black adolescents, instead of hurting themselves, like, we often, when we hear self-injurious behavior, we often think cutting, hurting themselves, banging their head, burning themselves. For Black adolescents, they might be more willing to put themselves in a harm's way because they're willing to die. I remember having a Black client who said, and this is in group setting, and they said, I didn't believe that I will live beyond 30. Right, so that, because you see that in the community, the violence, the sudden death. So like, why would I see myself, living to be 75 or 80? So briefly about American Indian and Alaskan Natives, I'm going to talk about just briefly on the inclusive language. I think it is important to ask people how they want to be addressed. But it also has a lot to do with where people are in their kind of like cultural identity development. I remember so I've been here for 22 years, and the first few years that I lived here, I went to a grocery store on Nicollet on East Street, and I saw 3 teenagers. They were whispering and kind of looking at me, and I'm like, I don't know what that's about. And then probably one of them lost the bet, and they came to me and they said, so what are you? And I said, what do you mean? I said, so are you Asian? And I said, yes, I am Asian. And I mean, I look like this, so like, what am I gonna say, right? But the fact that they are curious, and I do not take offense by that, as you can, I'm late. I have been asked, am I from the Philippines? I'm like, no, I'm from Thailand. What I mean by cultural identity is that I remember early on when I record my voice message, voicemail box, I tried very hard to get rid of my accent. And I would keep re-recording because I don't want people to have preconceived notion. Like, I want you to think like, I'm a white therapist, like, because I hold some kind of credentials or something that, made me, my status elevated. And then, one of my colleagues said, Warren One, your name is Warren One. People know that you're not white. And I'm like, thank you. Like, I would never have thought. So I just stopped trying. So it's like, okay, then, like, that's my recording, so, yeah, so, why did I get off on that? Oh, cultural identity. Whereas when I was, in training and I was supervising master student, and I asked her, I said, I noticed you have an accent. Where are you from? And she said, I'm from India. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. How long have you been here? Are there any challenges? And I thought I just have like, trying to have like acknowledging, right, what's there, what's in our relationship. At the end of the semester, so I asked for feedback. And she said, well, when you ask me where I'm from, like I don't remember her specific words, but she feel offended or, something to that effect. And I'm like, but why? Like, who you are? But maybe at that point, being asked that question feel like, there's a drift or like, oh, I am the other, right? So yeah, and like here the terms, they use American Indians. And my first job, I asked my client specifically, like, so how do you identify yourself? And she said, I'm native. I'm like, oh, okay. So when I refer to her, it's like, yeah, she's a native, client. African American. Low suicide rate despite risk factors, and we believe that it has something to do with the stigma against suicide and religiosity of, like suicide it's frowned upon. In Latino community, there's a rising rate in suicide, and that is because A, negative attitude about seeking outside support. And B, the fatalism, the means in which they use to suicide, that's also increasing the rate of completion. Again, I've been practicing for 20 years. I have not seen a single client from the Latino community. Why? A, I'm sure there's language barrier. They probably want somebody who can speak Spanish. B, do they have healthcare coverage to be able to access mental health? Right, so there are barriers there. Asian Americans population also have the lowest suicide rate. But it doesn't mean that, Asian Americans don't have stress or mental health conditions. It means that, we don't seek help, even though there are pressure. There's also shame, like, why can't I figure this out? There's something wrong with you. If you suicide, you bring shame to the family. And more importantly, Asian people, and I can speak to that because I've known a lot of Asian people, and I'm one of them. You try harder, you don't give up. So suicide is giving up. So giving up is not an option, right? So I think that is also kind of contribute to the lower rate. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning, that I only use suicide risk factors and the warning sign, not as a way for you to kind of like know how to assess, but more about what might be some risks that if you know someone personally or people in your community, that you might be able to go, would you like to talk to someone? These are resources that might be helpful for you. So individual risk factor, previous suicide attempt, during my screen call, that is always my question. I usually like ask some general questions like, oh, have you been in therapy before? What was helpful, what's not helpful? What are you looking for this time around? And then toward the end, I would ask, like, there are two standard questions that I ask everyone. Would it be okay if I ask you that? Now I have people who say no. And then I said, are you currently or at any point in your life have suicidal ideation or attempt suicide? If you are 50 years old and you have suicide attempt at 16 and nothing since, I am much more relieved. If you're 25 years old and you just attempted suicide 3 or 6 months ago, the risk is significantly higher, right? So I assess for previous suicide attempt, any history of depression or other mental health concerns, serious illness such as chronic pain. Health problems increase suicide risk significantly because at some point you start asking yourself, is my life worth living anymore? Right? I know that there are protective factors such as, I want to see my grandchildren grow up. I want to see my kids, getting married. And if every day I live with excruciating pain, I cannot leave my house. I can't even feed myself. I have a burden to other people, that the risk is up higher. Criminal and legal problems, of course, once you are a part of the criminal justice system, you have records. When people do background check, it's hard for you to have housing, it's hard for you to have a job. So limited opportunities leads to a sense of hopelessness. Job financial problems or loss, again, if you're struggling day in and day out, job loss, have tried for a long time, still haven't had a job. People start getting hopeless. Impulsive or aggressive behavior. If you have problems, but you have resources, you have people you can talk to, you have community you can rely on, you have your faith that you know that you're gonna be okay. You are able to access your internal and external resources versus someone who said, what's the point? That impulsive and aggressive behavior increase the risk. So again, you can ask people questions. Substance use, of course, is lower your inhibition. It does not allow you to access your thoughtful, logical mind at that point. Current or prior history of adverse childhood experiences. Okay, so this is the time that I start asking the audience so that I don't preach to the choir. How many of you are familiar with adverse childhood experience study? Excellent. Okay. Do you know what are those questions? What those questions are when you have people do the questionnaire? Some of you do. Okay, good. So I'm going to share some. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, between 1995 and 1997, the Center for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente in San Diego, California, gave these questionnaires to 17,337 participants. That's a large sample. And then they follow them over time. So they realize that people who have high ACE score, have higher rate of suicide, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and chronic disease. So I think we look at ACE study more as a public health concerns of like, okay, this is going to be a predictive factors for people to have poor health in the long run with heart disease, liver, cancer, type 1 diabetes, increased drug abuse. So some of the questions, so all of these, and I want to make sure, trigger warning, some of these questions are very invasive. So I don't ask my clients these questions. I slip it in as a part of the intake packet because people may have these experiences, but they may not want to talk to me then or ever. And it is not my job to say, oh, it seems like you have trauma. I want to talk about it. No, I just like, oh, 6 out of 10, that's pretty high. So before age 18, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Assess for physical abuse before age 18. Did a parent or other adults in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marked or were injured? So again, so there are two questions around physical abuse. There's one question around sexual abuse. Question about like, not feeling loved or important, not having enough to eat, having dirty clothes, loss of biological parent through divorce, abandonment, or other reason. Was a mother or stepmother, so this is specifically look at the female adult in the household. The mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her, kicked, bitten. You live with anyone who have problem drinking, so again, because then with that kind of instability, you never know, what your parents gonna come, where you're gonna come home to. Alcoholic use or street drugs, household member depressed or mentally ill, and then did a household member go to prison? So those are 10 questions. And some, not all of my clients, because I'm aware of like being a solo practitioner and I have backup. Some of my clients have extensive trauma experience, so they have dissociative abilities. So the score, a score 4 and higher, has a high correlation with people who then have dissociation. And again, when I hear the word dissociation, some people have the idea just like symbol, like way back when, it's like, we have Ulta. Not everyone are at that far end of the spectrum. Majority of the people I work with, they recognize that, there are different parts of me, and there's this vulnerability that get activated, over certain circumstances. And again, just because increase the likelihood of having dissociation, if you have 4 or more, does not mean all of them. I make a conscious effort to not only ask about risks, but I ask about protective factors. I have many clients that I often wonder, like, how could you have those things happen to you and you're still here? And I would ask, like, were there other neighbors, uncles, grandparents, like who around you that you feel like you can go to? Oh yeah, my grandma is always nice to me, I can always go to her about anything. I'm like, okay, good. Or my teacher. Yeah, all right, so current or prior history of adverse childhood experiences. I know that there are different versions now. I believe one is from Philadelphia, so they do more relevant to the African American community, like around gun violence, around violence in the community that help predict this sense of hopelessness, and then violence or victimization is also increased the risk. So that is the individual risk, and I think these are the things that we can probably spot if we talk to someone. Relationships, so here you have relationship, community, and societal risks. So there are some overlapping, or you kind of like, community, societal, kind of similar, which they are. So bullying, so we know that, being told, I have a client who said, yeah, when I was in middle school, people said that you should die. I'm like, huh? But that is the experience that happened, that people feel like, yeah, you can make the other person feel less than, feel that way. Family or loved ones' history of suicide, this increased the risk because if you are not exposed to that, you never even think that that was an option. But once Uncle Jeff suicided or grandma did this, then it became, oh, so if things get too hard, that is an option. So sometimes when my clients get very hopeless, I don't kill them, but I inform them. I said, is that the legacy that you want to leave behind? Because this will impact your family. Lots of relationship, high conflicts of violent relationship. and social isolation. Again, when we don't feel like we are a part of a larger community, when we feel deeply alone, we start thinking like, well, there's really no way out. Societal factors, stigma associated with mental health, easy access to lethal harm. So I can't emphasize enough about access. It is true in addiction, it is true with suicide, it is true with violence. If I am trying to stop drinking, I don't have alcohol, it's midnight. Liquor store's not open at that time. I'm too lazy to get in a car. I would probably ride it out, call the sponsor, make it another day. I'm craving alcohol, it's downstairs. Chance of relapse is higher. It's the access issue. When my clients say, you know what, it's really rough and I don't know if I can be safe. What do you have? Oh, I have medications that I haven't used. I have knives at home. Do you have a rope? Do you have a gun? Yeah, I have a gun, but it's locked. I don't have the code. Only my spouse has it. Okay, so having access to lethal means will increase your risk. Media portrayals of suicide. I did read an article, there is an uptick in suicide rate after Robin Williams' suicide. Again, it is about exposure. When you talked about teenagers, especially teenage girls, I have a few clients who have a history of self-injurious behavior. And I said, oh, so how long did you do it? Why did you do it? What happened? And they were like, oh, once. And which is curious, right? Because the majority of the time when people have self-injurious behavior is the way to regulate, to feel like, okay, I'm still here. And they said, oh, some other girls did it in the bathroom, so I tried one. It's not my thing. Again, this is about exposure. Community risk factors, lack of access to healthcare. If I am depressed and I know that I can, call in, show up, schedule intake, my insurance will pay for it, versus I don't have insurance, I might get deported, I don't even know where to start, the risk is again higher. Suicide cluster in the community, if you live in a community where suicide is a thing, again, it's about like it's being normalized. Stress of acculturation. I just love my country. There's a lot of war going on. I can't go back. I don't know the way around here. I don't know how to navigate. I don't belong here. That type of stress increases suicide risk. Community violence. Historical trauma. I mean, I don't know if you are familiar with epigenetics in terms of like how the trauma got passed in the genes that get expressed through different generations. Discrimination. I should mention something when I hear the stress of acculturation. People assume that because I'm a person of color, I experience a lot of racism. And I said, not really. Why? I'm married to a white man. I'm surrounded by white, educated people who are not kind of like, oh, why are you here? I have a doctorate degree, so that's kind of like level education, elevated the status in the community. I came here for my own choosing, I came here for education, and I stay on. When people, I went to Thailand for 2 months and worked from there. I got a permission from Board of Psychology, and because my mom is 85 now, so it's like I want to spend time with her. And my client kept saying, "Are they gonna let you out in the country?" And I'm like, I don't know, but at the back of my mind, I always can go back to Thailand. Not all people who came here can say that. They have nowhere else to go to. So choice matters. All right, so we talked about suicide risk factors. I'm gonna transition to protective factors. Any questions or thoughts so far? Okay. All right, so protective factors, always, just like we talked about strengths and weaknesses. Don't see only the vulnerabilities, see strengths. I have 3 clients who I've worked with, who you can name all kinds of trauma they have, relational trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma. And yet, you know, they continue to be strong. And that's what I mean when I said that my clients are my best teachers. They taught me so much about like what we as human can do. That being said, I also caution people, just because you can doesn't mean you have to or you should. Okay, effective coping and problem solving skill, I mentioned that as we were talking about impulsivity. Like if you have like clear mind, if you have resources, you can cope better. Reason for living, you know, friends, family, pets. I have a client who only 26, but had suicidal ideation, strong one with plan since 16. And I said, it seems like you have many opportunities. How come you didn't follow through with your plan? And the response was, I was living with my roommates. I didn't want it to be messy, and my roommate had to clean up after me. I'm like, man, how thoughtful, like in the depth of your despair, you thought about somebody else, right? So yeah, feeling like, you know, you don't want somebody else to have to clean up after you, that could be a protective factor. Strong sense of cultural identity, like I mentioned earlier, because cultural identity is about where I belong, who I belong to. I remember, you know, I was green in the field, and I'm like, how come people want to know their birth parents? Like, if you have a family who love you, who cares where you're from? Well, ask and get to learn and know about adoption, and people are like, oh, it's important to know your roots, to know where I'm from. So that's why 2 months, 3 weeks out of the year, I would bring my daughter to Thailand, because I want you to know that half of you is from this culture. And that, you know, why we don't play with our feet, why we pay respect to our elders, why we don't touch people's head, you know. So having strong cultural identity, where I belong, that's a protective factor. Community protective factor, again, feeling connected, having access to physical and emotional and behavioral health care. Relationship, are you having supportive partners, have friends, feeling connected to others? Societal protective factors, we talked about access, so reduce access to legal means, help lower suicide risk. Cultural, religious, or moral objections to suicide. Now, so we always already talked about risk and protective factors. We're gonna do warning sign. So look at this list and see if you know someone in your life who may have 1, 2, or more. Right, talking about being a burden, as I mentioned earlier, about, you know, when people have chronic health problems. I have a client who in his mid-50 and had stopped working for the last 10 years because of chronic health. So you have male conditioning. Well, I'm supposed to be a provider, but you know, my wife is a breadwinner. No, I don't feel like I contribute enough. I'm a burden. But you also have other protective factors about, you know, I want to do this to my kids. I want to see my grandkids grow up. I want to teach them how to fish. No. So there's both risk and protective factor there. Being isolated, increased anxiety. Anxiety is about agitation. Agitation is about not thinking through. It's like, okay, I might do something impulsively. Feeling trapped, being unbearable pain, whether emotional or physical. Increased substance use. I have yet to meet someone who said, I want to wake up tomorrow and just use drugs. It's not a desired thing. Most of the time, it is a way to numb the pain. Looking for a way to access legal means. So now, you know, we are moving from ideation to planning stage. Increased anger or rage. Again, go hand in hand with impulsivity, extreme mood swings, express hopelessness, sleeping too little or too much. So this is kind of like telltale sign of depression. Talking or posting about wanting to die and then making plans for suicide. Anyone know anyone who might have some of these warning signs? And you have resources, Mental Health Connect, that, you can distribute. So, knowing all of these risks that people may be living with, how do we promote mental well-being? So talking openly about it, reducing stigma. Again, just because we say talking openly doesn't mean that we should talk indiscriminate. We should see like, this is the place and time. I have heard stories about, younger generation go to a job interview and say, oh, by the way, I have anxiety and depression, so like sometimes I may have to take mental health day. Please do not do that, right? So, yeah, who am I safe to talk about this? Share your experience and see and know that there's help. Use inclusive language. I mentioned earlier, like how do people want to be addressed? I usually, it become a second nature that when I talk to my clients, I use the language of we. Like, so how can we help you do this? Making people feel welcome. Through faith and spirituality, be a part of community, foster friendships. I went to a training, this is 10 years ago now, and it stuck with me because I didn't think about it that way, but it makes sense. So we talked about, when you have soldiers who go to war, how come in the same war, exposed to the same thing, some develop PTSD and some don't. Now, granted, we talked about, all other risk factors, like do they have coping skills? What was it like in their upbringing? Did they have a lot of trauma? But there's also 3 things that stood out to me. 1, spirituality, feeling connected, feeling like, I'm gonna be okay. Having a sense of community, feeling belong, and having a sense of humor.
Having what?
A sense of humor. Because sense of humor is like a protective factor. It's kind of like, you know what? That happens, and be able to laugh at themselves versus I take things very seriously. Create a welcoming environment, school, workplace, community. I still remember this, and this is 15 years ago. So I was naturalized, so I have a US passport. So I visited family in Thailand, I came back, and you always have to go to the immigration officer, and they would ask you like, where did you come from, this business or pleasure? And then, so they ask this question, and then this white immigration officer said, welcome home. I'm like, oh, so you think that I belong here, thank you very much, right? So your status, what you say, like that welcome home, 15 years later, I still remember it.
Yeah.
And seek mental health professional as needed. Okay, now we're going to talk about how do you find a good therapist? Okay, my watch goes to sleep because it's after 8. Even though I usually go to bed at 8. Okay, so what to look for in a therapist? Experience is important. I remember thinking like, man, I just got out of grad school. Who's gonna come see me? There would be people who like to see young people. If a client comes to me talking about video game, I'm like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. I have clients who would be like, oh, I need somebody who has, knowledge of this and this and this. Whereas now, 20 years in, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen something similar before. I can reference to that. What's the specialty? I tell people like, these are my scope of practice. If you're looking for eating disorder or grief, not my thing. Now, people often say that like, wait, but if you work with trauma, you work with grief. Yes, but not directly like as I just lost someone. Right, because there are, intervention and strategies around losses, not just sitting. I mean, being present with your clients is half of the therapeutic intervention, but that is not the only thing that should be able to offer your clients. practicality, scheduling, are you in network with this person? I have very, very few instances that, that, let's say, I'm in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield, that, I'm in network with this policy, but not policy. So at least in that way, they make it, simpler. Relatable aspects, just like I mentioned, people sought me out because I want somebody who understands my experience in a marginalized group. Sexual orientation, is it important for you to, see clients with, identified as an LGBTQ? Does gender matter? Faith, I remember having one client who's really, really, really religious, and he starts citing verses. I'm like, I don't have a clue. Fortunately, that wasn't what he came to see me for. I actually had one client who asked me, are you religious? And I'm like, say more, like what are you, trying to understand? And they said, well, sometimes religious people can like judge if I don't, believe in the same faith or something like that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, in that case, no, I probably won't call myself religious, but I do believe, in certain, like I have certain belief or something like that. So that didn't come up since that question, but I thought that was a, straightforward question of like, yeah, are you religious? Make sure to interview. I can't capitalize interview enough because when you do this work, you want to make sure that you can connect with people. So that's why that 15 and 20 minutes that I offer to people, I want them to get to know me. Like, and I would say like I come from the culture where people are very polite. So when I first came to Minnesota, I'm like, this is home. 22 years in, I'm like, no, please tell me what you really mean. So I tell my clients, I said, like I'm very transparent, like what you see is what you got. If I tell you that, man, I am so proud to see like, the progress we made, it means that. If I say, I'm worried that we have been here for 6 months, but we continue to talk about the same thing. What do you think about it? It means I'm worried. And most people really appreciate that. I'm like, oh, good, because I think, especially people who experience traumatic experiences, they feel like they always have to read between the lines. And I say it, is this okay? Should I say this? Should I not? So by me just saying that, it just take it out of the equation. Now, with private practitioner like me, I have the bandwidth to say, I'm going to offer free consultation so that you know what you're getting into. It might not be true at the clinic setting. As a matter of fact, most people don't even think about interviewing therapists. They just call in and say, I've been depressed for the last 3 months. I want to talk to someone. And they might say, well, what day works for you? And so, Wednesday afternoon, good. Oh, Melissa has, an opening at 3. Why don't I schedule an intake? If I were that person, I probably said, is it okay for Melissa to call me? I want to talk to her a little bit. So get a sense. And then don't be afraid to discontinue if it does not work out. I have a client who I have seen for the last year. And she had a previous therapist. And she said, yeah, I saw a previous therapist for 5 years. The first 2 years was really great. We worked on something, but the last 3, like we were just friends. No, please do not use your therapist as a paid friend. Like that is not what they're there for. So if it's no longer working, you might give like 5 sessions and like you keep, oh, this is not working, this is not connecting. Now I have to say, for some people, I have one client who we kind of keep like bumping up against something, like I'm not validating enough, or I'm not like use too much self-disclosure and that person want to know more. Now, for some people, having to navigate through those type of relational challenges, it's an opportunity for growth. And for some people, that's just too much work. Like, I'm not here to try to work through a relationship, right? So I think those are important things to ask, to look for, and to stop if it doesn't work. And I believe that wraps up my presentation to the day. These are the references if you would like to take a look. All right, so I think we have Q&A.
Yep.
Where should I be hiding?
You'd be right where you are.
Okay.
Or if you want to sit down, whatever you want to do. Okay.
Right, well, the question, I'm not up here to ask questions, so, oh, right. I'm here to run.
And we might need to try to repeat the question just so that the computer can hear.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Turner, I'm Kathy from Creekside Church in South Minneapolis. And it's a little broader question, because you work with a lot of BIPOC people, and you've mentioned the increasing stress that people have. When you think about the Minneapolis communities and the variety of trauma that's been hitting them,
Mhm,
the gun violence, various things,
Mhm.
depending on the community,
mhm,
the macro picture of
Mhm.
immigration enforcement you touched on. But I wonder if you could just elaborate more on what, your pulse, like your connection with the pulse in some of the communities, particularly the Asian community that you mentioned,
mhm,
but others too, maybe just a little bit more, because you're speaking to a majority white audience,
mhm.
and like, we're very interested in knowing from an empathy point of view, how are people doing?
Mhm.
And we can't generalize, of course,
Mhm.
but there may be some additional things you might want to just share.
Mhm.
Comparing like what you're seeing now in private practice versus maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
What is the health of our community
Mm.
overall?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Does the Zoom people can hear? How do we know?
They can hear you, but they can't hear her, just.
Oh, the other mic doesn't, okay.
Well, your mic, yeah, it's just you have to be close to the computer.
Okay, so the question is, what is the sense do I have, the health of the community, the BIPOC community, that I see now in private practice versus, 10 years ago? I think that, how do I form this? I think that because of the ongoing effort in reducing stigma with mental health, I do see that people seek out more. But I also notice there's significantly higher distress. And I think a lot of that is because of the political climate. I mean, I've been here 22 years. I love the Twin Cities because I feel like, there's so much diversity. I don't walk around and see just all white people. You see kind of like people of all different cultural background. When I go for a walk in the lake, I say good morning and people say good morning back. These days, when I walk and I say good morning, people don't say good morning back. My immediate reaction is that, oh, they don't think I belong. I shouldn't be here. Right, because of all the us versus them, they are criminal and they should be deported kind of thing. I think that like, even if we have more access, but I think because we also have a significantly higher distress, I think that this is the time that we have to kind of lean on the community, that sense of belonging. I often tell people like we heal in connection, we do not heal in isolation. I tell people like, have you ever wondered why when there are losses in the community, people do the candle vigil? Because that's coming together. That's about healing together.
So way back in the second slide.
Hmm.
There were two statistics. One said 88% of US adults say that having a mental health disorder is nothing to be ashamed of. And then the next point is 84% of US adults think mental illness carries a stigma.
Mhm.
So I think there might be some subtle difference between believing that it is nothing to be ashamed of and also carries a stigma. They seem related, but I'm guessing there's some subtle difference, which I don't quite understand.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So the question is, in the slide under mental health and stigma, how come 88% of the US adults said that mental health disorder is nothing to be ashamed of, but 84% said that the term mental health, mental illness still carries stigma? I think the main difference is, if I believe that I have a mental health concern or challenges, it's okay. It's like a part of human struggle. But the term mental illness specifically, because I think when people use the word mental illness, they usually think about something very serious, like, oh, you have schizophrenia, you have psychosis, like you have something like really, really wrong with you. Yeah, so I think that's the difference. Mhm.
I like the language of protective factors, and I would just like to delve into that a bit more with,
Mhm.
the BIPOC community. Do you find that, that the protective factors, considered protective factors, differ between different cultural groups?
Ooh. Does the protective factors differ in different cultural group? Let me think on that for a moment.
More about the emphasis on them, that kind of thing, or the, you know, the more, more that are more in their realm of thinking, that they see them as protective.
Say more about the realm of their thinking.
Yeah, so what's, do cultures see a protective factor? What works more, is more protective in some cultures than others, and may not be in some cultures? How is it different?
Okay, yeah. I don't know if I can generalize to all culture. I would say though that when I pull into kind of like what can feel like this is protective, this is promoting mental well-being, it has a lot to do with a sense of belonging and connectedness. Yeah, and I mean, you probably know, like, we have decreasing number who identify themselves as spiritual or religious. Many people call themselves more as an atheist. And I think that there's also a decline in that connecting with something higher to feel like, okay, I'm going to be okay. So yes, I think that what is gonna help people in the long run, oh, and I'm gonna step back for a moment. I live with someone who does not believe in religion. And for me, I'm like, religion is not good or bad. It's actually quite helpful for many people. And so I have a conversation about, so what do you think happened after you die? Right? So different beliefs and different religions and culture. And this person said, you just poof. And I said, what do you mean you just poof? Like you stop to exist. And I'm like, and that doesn't bother you? No, my body just stopped functioning. Now, that being said, I also know that this person that I know experienced quite a bit of struggles when there are bumps in the road in their life, because they don't have something that they lean to and know that, okay, this too shall pass, like I am going to be okay. Because when you think that, you just stop to exist, it that kind of like isolating mindset, like this is me and me alone, and then, versus like having something that larger than yourself. Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, I have a lot of questions. I like it. That means you're listening.
When you were talking about having a diagnosis, and that you had to have a diagnosis to get treated,
Mhm,
and that someone was wanting to go into police work,
mhm.
they couldn't have a diagnosis.
I don't think that they couldn't have, but I think that if there is ever a question, and then they look back in their health records, then they might say, oh, this person has a history of impulsivity, or have depression. they may not be suitable to serve, you know, in the law enforcement anymore. I think for that person is more as a precaution that this would definitely like harm me in the future. I'm trying to think. I know that I have a client who after they stop seeing me, they apply to FBI. And FBI actually asked me to write a statement that this person will be safe to use firearms. I said, I cannot say that. What I can tell you is that during the time that I worked with Mr. So-and-so, there was no indication of impulsive behavior or violence. So there are things that, you know, like different agencies want mental health professionals to vouch for. So, yeah, because I think that they're concerned about safety when, you know, somebody have access to firearms and they want to make sure that somebody is quote mentally stable. So. Yeah.
So I work with a number of students from the BIPOC community who will tell me, you know, this is the first time I shared this. We don't talk about this in my family. They would be very angry if they knew I was sharing this. They don't believe in mental health. And so I'm wondering how we can do a better job of getting them into our offices, or for those of us who are in faith communities, we meet someone that is a member of the BIPOC community who clearly could benefit from seeing someone, but there's that almost stigma, I guess you could say, within the family, or perhaps an understandable mistrust of Western medicine. How do we get past that?
So the question is, for many BIPOC community who still carry stigma and not wanting to disclose their struggles outside of the family, how do we help them or invite them to better utilize the services? That's what you're saying. I think in general, I think it's probably helpful for people to know that this is a place that we're not here to judge. We are here to help you understand what might prompt the challenges that you have, and what can we do so that you can feel better. Now, it is absolutely true about, you know, not air the dirty laundry, you know, outside of your family and so on. I tell people that we're not here to blame, right? We are not here, I believe that everybody did the best that they can under the circumstances. So this is not a blame game. This is about helping you understand the impact of what had happened and what are you going to do so that you don't have to live that way anymore. You are right about, that's why I have two Thai clients, because I remember giving a talk like, so what do Thai people do when they're struggling? It's like, you go to a temple and kind of like, you know, absorb the Buddha teaching, or you go to see a fortune teller. Fortune teller in Thailand is pretty much your therapist. They tell you what you want to hear, they validate, like, you know, this seems like a hardship for you. As a matter of fact, when I was engaged, you know, I was gonna come here and live with my now husband. My mom went to a fortune teller. Is she gonna be okay? And the fortune teller told her that they were destined to be together because they were together in their previous life. And my mom said, okay, you can go now. So sometimes you just need, you know, someone to tell you. So, yeah.
So in regard to the field, the professionals of therapists, what are you seeing, or what are the ways in which culturally appropriate care is being incorporated in supporting the BIPOC community? Have you seen like many changes during your time being a therapist as far as like what's happening in the field and how people are responding more favorably to culturally appropriate care?
So the question is, have I seen changes in terms of, you know, the mental health therapists, the training, the community that kind of perhaps provide like cultural sensitive approaches to the BIPOC community. Yes. So my training was not too long ago, and in the program, we've talked more about having inclusive language. In my time, it is a required class to talk about multiculturalism. As a matter of fact, the reason that I actually got my doctorate was because I was talking to the dean, because I was interviewing the APA accredited programs in the Twin Cities, and at the University of St. Thomas. 1 week after that interview, they sent me an email and they said, we want our student body to have a student of color to provide different perspectives. Would you be interested in applying for scholarship? So they want that diversity. And I'm the one who said, I think it's kind of overgeneralized to say this culture would be this culture would be that. How could we, make this, individual experience for this person? As a matter of fact, even health insurance also make an effort. Like when I renew the being in network, they would ask you, in the last 12 months, have you had multicultural training? Because they want you to be able to provide that culturally responsive care to clients.
The thing you mentioned about interviewing your therapist
Mhm.
before you have a session,
Yes,
I've been in therapy a few times. I was not aware that was
an
an
option.
option.
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear it. So is that, the last few times, been in therapy 3 or 4 times, I think, for periods or whatever.
Mhm.
But anyway, so mostly with Alina Health, and
Mm.
nobody ever offered that to me. I mean, would they, I'm thinking they would think you're nuts. I would think that somebody would think, what? I don't know.
Mhm.
Is that common for people to ask you that? Is it usually acceptable?
The question is it acceptable to request an interview with your would-be therapist? It is acceptable, it is your right, and they have an option to deny you. I think it is that, like when you're working with a healthcare system, just kind of like when I call and I say, hey, I want to establish primary care, which doctors are available, right? I'm not asking, can I please meet with Dr. Smith, or talk, for 10 minutes just to get a sense what his or her specialty are. Right. So yeah, so I don't think people think that is an option, but I think you can always ask. And the thing is, I think if people can, they would be willing to accommodate, because they also don't want you to show up and kind of like, oh man, this doesn't work out. That's a good question. Yes, I know. That's why I'm like, interview, please. Like,
I haven't had the best experience with that. I think mostly what I find is people are like kind of stunned that you would want to interview them, but they still want to interview you. That's what they call an intake, right? So I just say, well, I need to find the right fit. It's either me or my child, and so I really need this to move forward. So approaching it in a way that was sensitive to both parties, but there's pushback.
Yes, did you win finally?
Well, yeah, it's either I'm not gonna go to that therapist because they weren't accommodating to having an interview, which already shows me I'm probably not with the right person.
yes, exactly. So advocacy is important to say that, well, if you are not able to give this time for me to get to know a little bit before an intake, then this might not be a good fit. So, all right, thank you.
Many thanks, Dr. Turner, for your talk, and thanks everyone for the great questions and the conversation afterwards. I'm aware of the time, so I've just got a couple of really quick things. First of all, I just just to draw connections, we have someone on staff at Mental Health Connect who does trainings on HOPE, which stands for Healthy Outcomes from Positive Experiences, which I just want to flag for you. It's research out of Tufts University that's about those protective factors, or research saying when somebody has many ACEs, what are the things when they were a child that were protective factors. So, and some of you in the room might have heard Ann Ellison give that talk on HOPE in the past. So just wanted to draw that connection. Come back here next month on October 14th to hear, I got to write down his name, Michael Derschlag, talk about adolescent substance use and misuse, what we need to know. And then I just wanted to say, thanks again to Tabitha for coming to talk about the conference. We will have a Mental Health Connect table, and we're in need of a couple of volunteers to help with one shift in the morning at the table. So if you're now planning on attending, which I hope you are, and you'd be willing to sit at the Mental Health Connect table a little bit, you can still go to all of the events and hear all of the speakers. Please reach out to me because we'd love to have your help. And then lastly, when you walked in, hopefully you got a feedback form, and we would love if you would fill that out and turn it in at the table in the back, because that helps us plan our future talks. So, and again, and also again, you can buy a book in the back. Martha will be back there. So thanks, everybody. So
Now, because when these get together, we're gonna talk.
yes, so buying the book is, yes, it's for a book club. So you'll want to read it before the gathering. So thanks everyone so much. Have a good night.
I always worry about that, but no, but you know, it's and like I'm trying to, like, direct.
Heidi, can you close the?
Oh, wow, no one would know it's in that long. Really nice job. Thank you. So. Why should I? But what I learned was, and I want anybody to hear it, to be aware of that. And for me, it's not. As long as if you read the alcohol,